I get to introduce myself, which is a slightly odd situation. I could talk for hours, but I'm not. I'm going to tell a story to start with. I've got some questions. Questions that have been with me for a long time, over 10 years. I've been grappling with some questions, and maybe somebody here can help me with the answers. To give you a sense of how long that feels, you may or may not recognise your favourite handset from 2004. It's a long time ago, and I'm still looking for answers. Some nods of recognition. Which one was it? Many favourites. And I appreciate Dave setting me up nicely with the "it's too late for graphs." Well, guess what? My presentation's got measurement in the title, so tough luck. There are a couple, okay? But this is where my question started from. I dropped into running a corporate portfolio. We did the usual staff engagement survey. We called it Scope. And I had a few buildings that scored really well on the Scope score. I thought, that's good. We like that. But then I thought, well, I'll take the initiative. I'll survey the property. Not being a property person at the time, I wanted to understand what it was that I'd actually got to look after. And when I went and sent the surveyors around, the surveyors came back and told me that actually some of the best properties, according to the surveyors, were turning out the worst staff scores. But conversely, some of the scudsier places that which I had in my estate, which will remain nameless, were doing really well. Yet I'm there trying to pitch to the board and the FD and the others, give me some money, I've got a scudsier estate, I want to make it better. So I didn't share this particular insight with them at the time. I showed them the pictures of the leaky roof and all the other stuff that was going on. But that question's remained with me. And I'd like to promise you the answer. Well, let's see how far I can get on this journey. I didn't go to Reading, I'm not a surveyor. So my best friends are surveyors, would be a joke, but it's too late for me to do that. But I do have a belief in these three things when it comes to workplace. They must be efficient. Okay, you are never going to get away from the conversation with the FD, so I'm going to explore the aspect of efficiency in workplace. It also needs to be effective, and I've got my own meanings around what I take to be effective, and I'm going to celebrate the arrival of Leesman, but I still think there's some way to go to understand effectiveness. And this other thing, this engaging thing, talk about soft and fluffy stuff. But it's the only place I can go at the moment to try and find the answer for what I'm looking for. So let's see where that conversation takes us. And I must pay due deference and respect to those that went before me. On the shoulders of giants. I wish I knew the whole quote, someone can look it up for me. But Christopher Headley and the guys at IPD, the work they did with the high performing property unit, brilliant. Really great thought leading stuff. It's a shame that so few of us actually paid attention to the whole suite of materials that they produced, because they were trying to do some really good things. And it's still available to download and look at, and I recommend you do. More up to date, people like the Green Business Council have been doing some really excellent work. This quest for the meaning of productivity in the workplace, the holy grail. God, I got bored of conferences talking about productivity in the workplace. Hands up who's not been to a property or FM or workplace conference that's not talked about productivity in the last 5 years. So every time you go out, we talk about productivity. But there's evidence. Whether it's consistent, whether it's robust, whether you believe it, there is evidence. And I support these guys, and I spoke on their platform in relation to Milton Keynes, a fabulous building that Network Rail built. But let's talk about this obsession with measurement. Let's talk about efficiency for a sec. I won't do the history in the same way that Dave did, but we were a bunch of FMers. We were being told our costs were too high. The economic cycle told us to save costs. And we needed to prove ourselves, to benchmark ourselves, because how did the FD and the rest of the board know that we're doing a great job? So we reached for the previous generation of this. And again, please don't take anything that I'm saying to be decrying this work. It's a bit like Mark was going on to say earlier. If you don't understand the stuff about your estate that the GEM code gives you, you're not in a good place. Okay, it doesn't make any, what I'm going to say doesn't make any of this bad. If you don't know what leases you've got, if you don't know what space you're occupying, what it's costing you, who's occupying it, you're not in a good place to start the journey. So Mark was making some really good points, and I think it's about getting these basics in place, but they don't take us far enough. Because they spurt out charts like this. Apologies, I'm not going to do a whole talk on the IPD methodology, but they're really easy to understand. How much space do your people consume? And what's the total property cost of that space? You combine the two, you put a dot over it, approximately the size of the building you're talking about, and lo and behold, you can start to target the buildings that are inefficient against those metrics. And over time, you hope to demonstrate a shift. You hope that you're on the right side of your industry benchmark. You talk nicely to the guys at IPD to put you in the right pool. You study your estate carefully to work out which buildings you can claim to have done a refurbishment on in the last year, so you can take that one out if that's bothering you. There's ways that you can carefully nurse this data to make sure that in that end of year review, you can tell your boss, yes boss, I did it. I'm on the right side of the benchmark. Look, it's all good. It's the other buggers. We're okay. It's the wrong conversation. Good thing, bad thing. It's a good thing. We should be having benchmarks. We should be trying to challenge ourselves on our performance. But we can't be myopic about it. What are you going to do about it? It's a good question raised by Johnny. People going out and getting benchmarked for stuff. Why are they doing it? What's the point if you're not going to use it internally? If the only reason that I've spent thousands of pounds with the IPD over the years is to have the conversation with my boss to tell him that I'm doing a good job, I'd rather have taken the money as a bonus, to be honest. But you can go in various directions from there. You go various ways. Can I just check, anybody from IPD, MSCI, whatever they're called now, in the room? Close connections, affiliations? No. But I do promise I respect the work, and it's good work. Who uses the IPD? Any occupiers here? Got one tentative? Okay, couple. I recommend using it, it's really good. Trouble is, whilst we were pushing the costs down, the complaints would go up. Because where does that argument take you of benchmarking cost and space? If all you're going to do is shoot to the bottom left-hand corner, it's a black hole. You've got to be really careful about what direction you choose to go on this chart. So I'll give you a second, because it's late and it's a bit conceptual, but I'll give you a second. If you look at the green line, okay, that's a kind of cost-neutral strategy that you can take. Are you going to give your people less space and spend more on it, ergo better environment? Or are you going to give them more space and spend less on it, which is a strategy that I'm used to seeing, fairly shoddy estate on the whole, but we had a bit more space to breathe. Human beings seem to be able to cope with that. But the question you've got to ask yourself from here is, which direction does your organisation want to go? How much of that green space do you want to return to the FD? Because if you take a line, somewhere between the red and the green one, potentially you can improve your environment. You can start to provide your people with a better place to work. And for those that are around for the opening remarks that Lee gave, that's what I care about. Okay? I do all this because I want to give people a great place to work. So my argument is to go in the green space, because I'm still saving money for the organisation, but I'm giving something back to the people. And I think there's an important psychological contract that we need to be careful not to break with people. When we go into these agile working projects, and fewer and fewer of us have yet to do one, it is about the people. You can screw it up so badly if you get these projects wrong. So, and the red space, that you really are in trouble if you're being asked to go there. So I've seen myself looking at this chart time and time again, putting together strategies, talking to executive teams, and thinking, well, bloody hell, how do I stop them pushing me into that bottom left-hand corner? Because the metrics are really good. You know, I can use them. I can internally benchmark, never mind industry benchmark. I can work out why my supplier is charging me 3 times as much for the same service over the same space in one part of the country and another. That's a really valuable service. But of course, generally, I don't get to have that argument or conversation in the boardroom because they like things simple. They like a quick message. And that bubble chart's a great message. So I needed something else to kind of provide a safety net. And then a few years back, workplace effectiveness as a conversation grew. Tim Oldman, Annie, Div Yang, the Leesman team. Again, another brilliant piece of work. I respect it highly. I'm going to come on to it in a minute. Let me just talk about what I mean by including this page. This is my summary of workplace effectiveness. Because I come back to the point about us being human beings, okay, with some fairly basic needs. We started talking about this in the panel this morning. Why do we even have a place anymore? What's the point? It costs a shed load of money. It's difficult. It comes with all sorts of risks. Why do we do it? And I think we do it to come together as human beings, to sit around the campfire, to tell stories, to solve problems, to innovate, have a conversation with some shelter, some light, and some companionship. In essence, our workplaces aren't really very much more than this. They've got a lot more expensive and there's a lot more technology in them. But this is what a fit-for-purpose workplace is trying to do. And it needs to be effective at doing this. So what's Leesman? You've seen some of this already. I'll try and skip through it. But I do like the analogy of the X-ray. The thing is about the X-ray, it only tells you a picture. It doesn't tell you how to read the picture. And that's what Tim and the team will be really straight with you about. Here you go. And that's where there's a bunch of consultants now grabbing hold of the coattails of them and starting to make some great money out of working with you to read that X-ray of your organisation. And I would suggest that if you are going to engage in doing this kind of study, you actually invest something in your own team to learn how to use this information yourselves. Because if all you're going to do is receive the report and the first briefing from Tim and stick it on the shelf to next year, it's not going to do you any more good than the IPD report did. This is such a rich data source, and it's so complex that relying on a third party to interpret it for you and actually implement any change from it, I struggle to see how long that will survive. So my personal advice, and I've been running these for a few years, third or fourth year now of Leesman, is learn how to read the X-ray yourself. A new global standard? Yes, it is. What does it measure? Design impact. One of the clever things for me that the guys did with the survey was they didn't ignore the arguments we were having about what is productivity and how you measured it. They just said, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to work out what productivity is by asking people. Because at the end of the day, we're all pretty good judges of whether we've had a good day or not. You know, if you walk in the door, hang your coat up, put your case down, put your bag away, hug the kids, whatever, you know, kick the dog, whatever your habit is when you walk in the house, you know if you've had a good day or not. Now, if you ask enough people the question, have you had a good day or not, I think you can start to trust some of the answers. If your sample size is too small, a bit tricky. There's 130,000 people plus, Johnny was a bit out of date this morning, 130,000 people plus have answered the survey. It talks about the impact and importance of design. It looks at the activities that are conducted in the workplace, the physical features, and how the space is serviced. And yeah, it's great. And if you want to hear about it, call Tim. He'll send a person out to you and show you. But what should we be looking at? Is Andy still here from the BBC? No? I mean, I should thank Andy because he was great. He gave me the first and probably only swear word, I think, of the day. He said it was crap. The idea that we should care about design in the workplace was crap. That's Andy's opinion, and I think he qualified it as an opinion, because if you compare and contrast that to what Chris Kane's been doing in the BBC, or was doing in the BBC for years and years and years, the quality of design thinking that's gone into that environment is quite special for a semi-public service. And maybe they're on something, because when you look at all the data that comes out of the Leesman survey, over 80% of the people that respond will tell you that design of their workplace is important to them. Rather tragically, they'll also, less than half of them will tell you that it enables them to work productively. I don't speak text, but I think that's OMG. What have you been doing? You're senior people in the corporate real estate industry that have been churning out space for years and years. Yet the people sat in it are telling us, for half of them, it doesn't work. I've forgotten how many years ago it was that Mark was dealing with Janet Street Porter and failing to co-design. It's been quite a while that Craig Knight from Exeter has been telling us, get into co-design. If anyone knows Craig, please look up the work. It's really insightful, enriched spaces, but actually that conversation between you, the property people, and the business in producing what they have to go and live in on a daily basis is really important. Could you second guess it? I reckon 85% of the time you could. Maybe 90, 95% of the time. You can second guess what your internal clients need. But that's not the point. It's the conversation that you have. Anyway, I drift. Community and enjoyable and pride. We're starting to get into the softer, fluffier world of what is sometimes called HR. My problem is they don't seem to give a shit about what we're telling them off this. They're not listening yet, and that's our responsibility. I'm not going to stand up and bitch and moan about my colleagues in HR until I've worked out how many different ways I can get the conversation started with them. If I've got this data, if I own this data, it's my responsibility to share it and collaborate and help them to understand it. So what can the good people do? Top performing locations here. Enables me to work productively. There are some organisations where 3/4 of the people say it enables them to work productively. That's quite a leap from 50%. It's not perfect, and I'll come on to that. Gotta love a graph. If you want to understand this stuff, please talk to me later. But I'm using this to illustrate the depth of information that is on offer to you. The insight that you can gain from this stuff is fabulous. It's never been seen before, in my experience. Now, there have been proprietary systems. There's plenty of people who have designed their own post-occupancy reviews. There are design consultancies that do their sort of needs and requirements gathering piece. The thing is, nobody collaborated before. Nobody shared before. Nobody did it in a standard way. What this offers us, even if you disagree with some of the methodology and you'd like to put your own questions in, all the rest of it, actually we can start to have a set of standards and we can collaborate and we can all poke around in this data and we can all learn together from it. So there may well be some tweaks that people have got their own version would like to introduce, but it's important to all be doing the same thing. Quick point on agile working. and workplaces, and the fight against hot desking. Let's start with the blue line. I haven't done the build on this slide because I haven't got time, so let's go straight to the blue line. Blue line is a private office. This is in the happy old days when you stuck around long enough, they gave you an office. And then we went to a cubicle or designated desk in an open plan area, and lo and behold, the productivity dropped. People didn't like being kicked out of the offices, so they kicked and they railed, and they'll tell us, because this is survey data, they'll tell us they don't really like being in cubicles. Worse still, it's called here flexible with low choice. For me, that's hot desking. That's just kick them out and let them get on with it. Let them survive. That's the fetid ranks of desks that I looked after in Canary Wharf. Battery farming human beings who were paying an absolute fortune in salary, but given them the most shocking conditions. The encouraging thing is the green line. We can outperform even in closed office space if we do activity-based working well, because it helps with creating an enjoyable environment, because we are human creatures. We like to engage and collaborate and have a community. It can create a sense of pride. I've had people bring their mum to see the new office. Should I care about that? I do, actually. I want the people that work for me to be so proud of where they work that they'll bring their mum along, or they'll talk about it in the pub to their mates. That's got a value. Don't ask me to put it on the balance sheet. Don't tell me. I don't know how to talk to the FD about that unless they're one of the enlightened ones that gets that it's more than about the numbers. I'm going to skip this one quickly because we haven't solved it yet, but I think there's a new version of the bubble chart where and Johnny was going there this morning, he's looking at output compared to LMI. I think we can do something already by combining the IPD data and the Leesman data. Unfortunately, we haven't quite cracked that collaboration yet, but maybe we can get them to soon. Productivity. Now, I know, because someone's bound to tell me in a minute, that correlation doesn't necessarily equate to a cause or something like that. I'm not an economist, but just because I can find a line that goes through all these survey results that appears to indicate that productivity rises with LMI, but I'm prepared to take it on face value, that it does appear to rise with LMI, and this is a whole bunch of survey data. And I was told about my building out there, the red building was one of mine, and I thought, happy days. Happy days, because I had the Board 4 data as well. I knew the condition of the estate before we got to the red dot, and it was pretty poor, to say the least. So we spent a little bit of time basking in glory and sort of patting ourselves on the back and thinking, haven't we done a great job? Look at how the productivity has changed. The sense of pride is enormous. People are happy at work. Well done us. And it's a bit like that first chart I showed you, where there was other charts I didn't really want to share too much. Because when you zoom in on this, and if you believe the extrapolation, if you believe that red line, I was actually quite a long way off the boil. This building, which is a beautiful, fantastic building, was still, 20 points away on the productivity score? What's going on there? Yet other lucky souls, who probably hadn't spent quite so much on their property, were managing buildings or estates with buildings in that were scoring a lower LMI, but getting a higher productivity. And this kind of takes me back to my point that you can't just take this stuff at face value. You have to start to understand it. Don't just go and buy a survey. Just don't go and fill in the IPD data and go, okay, that's done for another year. File, move on. Unless you've got the people in your organisation with the intelligence and the time to pick this stuff apart, why are you doing it? I'd love to be in that smoking building. Well, maybe I don't. That doesn't sound right. I'm tired. But the point is, I think there's something else going on. And I think it's the engagement piece. I think there's something going on in business that we haven't understood in property yet. The HR folk they've got their own industry running on employee engagement. A bit like measuring property, you can measure employee engagement, and there's lots of surveys you can buy, and there's lots of consultants you can grease the palms of, and you can produce reports. I'm not there yet in terms of conviction that they understand it as well as I'd like them to. There seems to be some alignment around these three areas of think, feel and act. That's what generates engagement. And there's also quite a lot of studies done against those surveys that say engagement's really important. And it's outranking productivity and other things. Businesses that have high engagement in their employees perform better than others, the ones that don't. By quite a margin. So how do we use property to create engagement? Have we got an answer? I'm not there yet. This is what I want you to think about. Because if only 13% of our employees worldwide are engaged, and that's what was that? I think that was 2014, so apologies for the age of the data. That's pretty shocking. Because if you look at the way the costs build up in your business, and this is another Green Building Council report, if 90% of the costs in your business are staff costs, but only, let's say, 9% are property costs, and of those 9%, let's say a few percent are on the FM contract. We spent hours today talking about the FM procurement model and shaving a few percent off that. And we're worrying about saving a few sort of pounds on a square foot of space, or, you know, we're cutting all these little marginal gains, but I think we're missing the point. I seriously think we're missing the point. It's about the people. That's where the performance improvement's going to come from. And we need to work out how to tap into that. So I'll finish with a thought that 20% more people report being productive in a top 15 Leesman building than an average one. So I come back to my point that you should be looking at that kind of insight, but I don't think we've cracked it yet. I think we need to hold hands with our HR colleagues, get them to stop thinking about efficient transactions for payroll, get them to stop thinking about anti-litigious measures for employee tribunals, and start thinking about people. That's my piece. It's been said. Thank you.